Hi everyone, this is the third video in a series of 6 over the UIS IRB application. Today we'll be walking you through how to complete sections 4 through 6. So section 4 asks for funding information. So 4A asks, is your research funded? You'll want to indicate yes or no. For our study sample IRB application, we've indicated no. If no, is there a pending funding decision? This is where you'll want to mark yes if you do have that pending funding decision, or no if there's just no funding whatsoever. We've marked no because there's no funding whatsoever. For 4B, if either of the above were answered yes, you'll want to indicate that funding source. So that could be a state agency or a federal agency. But whomever the sponsor is, you want to mention that here. And then 4C says a copy of the funding application contract is included. So you'll want to include that, in other words, and then mark yes. All right, so that completes section 4. Section 5 asks for conflicts of interest. This is pretty straightforward, honestly. You'll want to consider a couple things, well, a few things actually. But for 5A, it says financial interest or fiduciary relationship with the research sponsor. So for example, investigator is a consultant for the research sponsor. We're not working with sponsors in our studies, so I've put no. But if we were working with a sponsor and we had that sort of financial interest or fiduciary relationship with them, then we'd want to put yes, just to be transparent and ethical. For 5B, it says financial interest or fiduciary relationship that is related to the research. So for example, if the investigator owns a startup company and the intellectual property developed in this protocol may be useful to that company. We have no intellectual property in this protocol, so we've marked no. And of course, we don't have a financial interest or fiduciary relationship anyway. But even if you did have intellectual property and, it may not necessarily be useful to the company, you could still mark no. But if you think it is going to, or if you know it's going to be useful to the company, you'll want to mark yes. And then 5C asks if you have 2 or more members of the same family, you'll want to mark either yes or no. We don't have a research team anyway, so we've marked no. But if you did have a research team, which you could still mark no, but if that research team has family members, then you'll put yes. So again, we've put no because we're not in a research team anyway, but even if we were and it wasn't with family members, we'd still put no. But if we had, our spouse or significant other working with us on this protocol, brothers, sisters, cousins, mom, dad, aunt and uncle, we'd mark yes. All right, so that concludes section 5. Section 6 is a bit more detailed and asks about participants and recruitment. So 6A asks, what is the estimated total number of participants? We covered this above in our objectives and aims section, but we mentioned up there it was 5 or 10 interviewees, so I've gone ahead and copy and pasted that number, 5 through 10. 6B says to select all participant populations you'll recruit, either intentionally or unintentionally. So it begins with age. We're working primarily here with adults, actually exclusively with adults. If we were working with minors, we could indicate that underneath. And then it mentions to complete section 8B, which we'll cover in a different video. And it also has specific age range. So perhaps, if we were doing a different study, we might want to work with an age range that covers both minors and adults. So maybe that's like 16 through 26-year-olds, for example. We'd want to indicate that in this text box. For gender and sex, we're not targeting a specific sex at all. So we've marked that here. But if we were, we'd mark this box underneath, and we want to indicate if we're working or targeting males, females, or people who may not subscribe to either male or female. So again, we're not working with a specific sex here, so we've put no targeted sex. Race, ethnicity, we're not targeting a specific race or ethnicity, but if we were, we'd want to mark that and then specify. For college students, we're not working with college students in our study, so we've marked no. But if we're working with the UIS general student body, we'd want to complete the campus-wide survey request form. If we were targeting a specific UIS student population, so perhaps, a course, for example, maybe students within a specific department or whatever else, we'd want to mark this third box here and then specify, that student body we're working with. And then the final one is students at institutions other than UIS, and then we'd want to specify. And then there's this other category which lists mentally disabled persons or persons with impaired decision-making capacity, people who are homeless, people with limited English proficiency or whose primary language is something other than English, people with limited civil freedom, so perhaps prisoners, parolees, or probationers, or we might have other, and then we want to specify. So our study doesn't touch on any of these, so we've left them blank. But obviously, if your study did touch on one or more of these, you'd want to mark these. 6C asks for the rationale for the selection of your specific population. We've put here most, if not all, local nonprofits solely hire employees over the age of 18, which also removes the extra step of having to include assurance forms and obtaining a parent or legal guardian signature for children under the age of 18 to participate. So yeah, since we're working with nonprofits here and specifically employees of nonprofits, they're in most cases going to be over the age of 18. And we've also already mentioned above that we want to work exclusively with people over the age of 18. So our rationale then is, these are the people we'll probably be interviewing anyway, since that's basically who these nonprofits hire in the first place. 6D asks for additional inclusion-exclusion criteria. We don't have that, so we've put not available. If you did have exclusion or inclusion criteria, you can mention that here. 6E says to select all recruitment procedures plan. We only mention website ads above, so we've included that here. But if you're wanting to, recruit people through like Qualtrics, for example, you can mark this box up here, the third box down. If you were, doing an email distribution list, perhaps you're on a listserv of some sort, you can mark that. If you're wanting to go the traditional route, you could try posting flyers, on lamppost or wherever, bulletin boards, you can mark that, or newspaper ads, whatever the case may be, you'll want to mark that. And of course, it can be one or more of these things too. 6F says for each group of participants, describe the details of the recruitment process and who and how will potential participants be contacted. So we kind of touched on this above, but I plan to recruit participants, and again, specifically employees of local nonprofits in Springfield, Illinois, by posting an advertisement on social media sites like Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Reddit. I've specified here for Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter that I'll post advertisements on my personal account, as well as request permission to post on group pages geared towards local nonprofits. So if you're working with online sites or social media sites, you might have specific, groups that you can post in. You can mention that there. And then on Reddit, since it's got its own sort of conventions here, namely the subreddits, which are groups that pertain to a particular topic of interest, I included that too. But again, you just want to explain, again, how you plan on recruiting your participants, and, it'll need to fit whether you're doing that virtually, physically, however you plan on doing that, you'll want to explain that here. And then for 6G, it says, will subjects receive compensations or rewards before, during, or after participation? We've put no, but if you were planning on offering compensation or rewards, you could put yes. You'll want to check with the office first, because that may require IRB approval. And the other thing to keep in mind here is that cannot be the primary incentive for getting participants to participate in your research. And another point to keep in mind, if you're using compensation or rewards, it needs to match the level of risk with your IRB protocol. And then if you do mark yes, you'll want to provide a brief description of the compensation or rewards. We don't have any, so we haven't listed any. 6H, you'll want to describe the expected benefits, if any, to study participants. If no benefit is expected during study participation, enter none. I've gone ahead and put none because it may not benefit those participants directly when they participate in the interview process, but it may benefit employees broadly speaking of local nonprofits. So, it may end up benefiting them and other employees, but it won't benefit them directly to participate in the interview. 6H, you'll want to describe the expected benefits. 6I, what is the duration of participants' involvement? So this includes hours, days, etc. The interviews should take anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. So I've listed that here. You want to make sure this is proportional to the amount of involvement it'll actually take them. So, if your participants are filling out a survey, for example, and it's maybe, 60 questions or something, you might want to give them at least a minute or 2 minutes to complete that survey. So, you might put like an hour, for example, and that would be pretty proportional. And then finally, 6J asks, how many times will participants engage in research activities? This is the only interview they'll be expected to do, so we've put 1. If you have, if you're doing interviews, for example, and you have people who may be contacted for a follow-up interview, you would put 2. And again, it really depends on the research study, but for our purposes, we have only 1 interview for the participants to be interviewed. So this concludes this video. Our next video will cover sections 7 through 8, and we hope you enjoyed.